Hi, welcome to our webinar dedicated specifically to review the event planning guide for Girl Scouts of the Desert Southwest. The purpose of the webinar is to review the guide page by page, touching and emphasizing some key points and leaving other areas for you to read and review on your own. The intention is for the webinar to be short, brief, simple, and added guide for any troop, group, or service unit that is interested, planning, or will conduct their own event. And we will go over the definition of an event as well. Before I get started, I wanted everybody listening to this webinar to know where our resource is located. So if you can see on my screen, I have a picture of the first page of the event planning guide. You can find this as well as everything else that I will go over today by going to our website, www.gsdsw.org. Once there, the easiest way to get to these is by clicking on Forms here on the top right corner. You do that, you will end up at this screen, Forms and Resources. We have created a particular category in this page called Event Planning so that you could come to this page, click on the Options section here, click Event Planning, search, and it will pull up all of the documents and resources in this category only. So that should be useful, especially as we go through the information today. Remember, all of the materials are available on our website. So I have opened up the event planning guide. That's what we will go over page by page today. So let me get started. First page, second page, first page is the cover. Second page will have a simple table of contents. I want to make it very clear that this guide is intended to help with any event except day camps. Day camps are usually 3 days or more. Full days or half days, that is a completely different set of circumstance, different event, if you will. So that is not going to apply to what we discussed today. That requires a lot more rigorous and detailed guidelines than what we will cover today. So today, what we will cover are events that any troop, group, or service unit is thinking about planning and doing. We will do that by going through these 6 steps that you see here. The first one is brainstorming. Second is budgeting. Third is an outline. Fourth is safety. 5 is sharing your event. 6 is wrap up. And then you see here in green, we will finish and wrap everything up with our event plan checklist. And you may be wondering what defines an event. Is that an activity? Is that a program? What's the difference? So there is a lot of terminology out there that can be a little confusing. So for us, an event is any that meets the following criteria. Includes girls outside of your troop or your service unit beyond the scope of your regular meetings. It's created, organized, and implemented by the troop or service unit, and it collects funds regardless if there's going to be a profit anticipated or not. So that should give you a clear understanding of what we define as an event for our council. Moving along to the third page. The third page is really important information before we get into the 6 steps. So first off, you have some bullets there on the top left corner of what events should do. And you can see they're very common sense. They should follow our GSUSA and council policies. You should follow the steps that we're going to outline in this guide. We have to make sure that it meets the safety activity checkpoints, be appropriate to the level for which you are planning the event. If it's for daisies, it has to be appropriate for that level. As an example, we have to provide positive learning experiences in all of our events and activities. We want to include girl-adult planning as appropriate, get the girls involved. The girls always come first. Consider the progression of activities and the skills necessary, and provide the maximum potential for fun, of course. So something that I want to point out very early that is not allowed, because we do get questions on it, is profit sharing. So we recently added 5.4.5.2 of our volunteer policies, which stipulates what you see there in red. Profit sharing, which is where a troop, group, or service unit receives a direct share of the profits when collaborating with another entity, is not allowed. You will see me repeat this later on and give some examples, but for now I wanted to point that out. And then you see here the second half of this page is all about securing necessary permissions. The intent of this guide was to eliminate as much paperwork and back and forth as possible. However, there are certain things that require council permission, particularly in writing. So we wanted to put that very clearly here early in the guide before we get to the rest of the details. They will be reiterated as well throughout the guide, but I want to make sure that we understand them. So first, if your event is a collaboration with any organization, business, or other entity, you have to have permission from either a council manager, director, or officer before proceeding. You can look on our website for under the staff directory and see who is available to you. Most likely you already have somebody that you deal with. Feel free and reach out to any manager, director, or officer on this matter. If your event, for example, is going to be in collaboration with an organization, whether that's a nonprofit, a business, or anybody else, then we want to make sure that that's okay. So you're going to ask this staff member if that is okay. So I also included a section here for you to include the name of the collaborator, which staff member approved your collaboration, and when that was approved. So keep this for your reference and also notate it for future reference, as well as in case your staff member asks you for it. Secondly, if the event is a fundraiser, you're going to need special permission from council. Now that's covered in new leader training as well as other areas. However, it also applies in this case. So a fundraiser is any event that plans to collect more money than needed for the event expenses. If that is what you are planning to do, it's okay, you can do that. However, you need to get permission from council first. And the form you would fill out and submit is called our money earning request form. And you can find that the same location I showed you under forms and resources. Also, all events are trips for other troop girls. So if your event is going to include a trip, at least one volunteer must complete the applicable travel training, which we have available on our website as far as details. If your event includes an overnight, you're going to need council approval before proceeding. If your event includes a trip outside of our council, you're also going to need council approval before proceeding. So just a reminder, this may not apply, I understand, in most events, but it's a good reminder. Also, if you will have an event flyer to market your event, you have to adhere that flyer to council guidelines. We'll cover 2 pages in detail on this. Once we go through those, permission from the council communications manager will be required to post that information on any of our council web platform or social media, as well as the calendar. We do ask for at least 1 week for posting after permission has been granted. And then, of course, as with anything, you want to make sure your membership manager is aware of these plans, as well as your service unit. They should also know what event your troop, group, or service unit is intending to move forward with. All right, so moving along to the 4th page. So the first step is brainstorming. I'm not going to go into detail. This is more information for you to look over and ask questions, right? The best way to plan, especially with girls, making it girl-led, is to ask a lot of open-ended questions. So I will say you want to start event planning as early as possible. That's just event planning 101. And there are some really good questions on page 4 that you want to ask as you plan. I won't go into them in detail, but you can see they summarize into what, when, where, who, why, and how. You will probably come up with more questions than what you see here in the guide, but it's to get you started. So brainstorming is step number 1 of any event planning. I do also provide some ideas on page 5. Keep this for your reference. There are some event themes that you see on your left side that are very popular and common, as well as particular event ideas. You're really only limited by your imagination. Keep in mind when you are planning events, our Girl Scout special days. So there's 4 of them up here on page 5. These are special days that usually already have events planned around them, or that would be really good focus areas for your troop, group, or service unit event. Moving along to the following page 6, or page 6. The next thing is an event timeline. This goes along with brainstorming, so I wrap it under step 1. It really depends on the event detail and length, what your timeline will look like. But this is a good guide. Don't feel you have to go through this in detail exactly like this, but it's a good guide to know when to plan what and as early as possible. So it depends on the event. So if you have a really massive event where it's, thousands of people you're expecting, that you're probably going to plan at least a year, if not, 9 months beforehand. If it's a smaller event, more intimate, then of course your planning could be 3 months or less. How the timeline we have here on page 6 and page 7 is a 6-month timeline. So just to give you an example, 4 to 6 months. So let me change the view again. So you can see here 4 to 6 months before the event, what you want to do as a checklist, 1 to 3 months before, 2 weeks before, 1 week before. The items in blue are what we covered as far as permissions required, because I want to be very clear on that. Those are just repeated here in blue. If we move to page 7, you will see it continue. Things that you want to do 1 to 2 days before the event, things to do the day of the event, and then things to do after the event. Because as anybody that does events knows, it doesn't end with the event. There's a lot of wrap-up things that need to be done post-event. Another hint or helpful tip that I would give to anybody planning an event is make sure you have a team. Events have a lot of details, and in order for an event to be successful, we need help. So get really good at delegating, so that you have a good team and everybody's involved and the event goes much smoother for girls, volunteers, parents, everybody involved. So I'm not going to go into more detail on the timeline. You can read this on your own. You will probably see that some of the items listed here may apply, and you never would have thought of asking that. Others you will see do not apply, and so you can disregard that. But all in all, it's a pretty good timeline for you to keep in mind. Moving along to step 2 of the event planning guide, it's the budget. And the budget is probably one of the most important things that you will do in planning your event. Every event should have a budget, whether you expect to make a profit, so to speak, or not. So a couple of questions. If your troop or service unit, are they paying for the event, which we mean that it's free to everybody that signs up? If not, then you should make every effort to make sure that the event sustains itself or pays for itself. And you'll see that in the worksheet that I'll show you in a little bit. You want to ask, how will the event be paid for? Are you going to have participant fees, or some of the troop service units going to donate or subsidize partial amounts as well? That's another possibility. Don't forget, when you're planning your event, to formulate an event cancellation and refund policy. With any event, you will have people that cancel last minute, some people that register but will not show up. So what are you going to do when they call and ask for a refund or your cancellation policy? Make sure you have that very clearly stipulated in your event plan. So again, we go over the idea of the event as a fundraiser. If your event is a fundraiser, remember that you need permission from council. The form that you would use for that is in blue on your screen, available on our website. Again, we repeat, no profit sharing is allowed. So for example, if you were going to do an event in collaboration with an I Painted That organization in your area. That's great. That's awesome. That's a lot of fun. That's doable. First, you have to have made sure to get permission from your manager, director, officer on that collaboration, as we discussed. Secondly, you have to make sure that there will be no profit sharing. So, what we mean by that is if they are requiring that tickets be sold to attend I Painted That session, there should be no kickback or money back to the troop based on how many tickets were sold. That's what we mean by profit sharing. And if it's not clear, you want other examples, feel free to reach out to us. All right, so let's get to how to do the budget. There's a lot of ways to do a budget. I understand that. We tried to provide the simplest way here in this guide. So it's a 5-step process. First one is estimate the total number of participants attending the event. Make sure to include those that are not paying. You'll have helpers, volunteers, special guests. Include them in this number because you will have to expend resources on them as well. Number 2, you're going to estimate your total expenses as closely as possible. That may mean some comparison shopping online. That's my favorite way of doing it instead of going, in person, but you will have to compare pricing for the best, of course. So you want to estimate your total expenses as closely as possible. 3, based off the number 1, number 2, you can determine the fee per person so that your event breaks even. That's what you want, unless you will try to make a profit, then you adjust that accordingly. You will divide the total expenses by the total number of participants. That'll give you your price per person. Number 4, determine the event revenue based off of that. And number 5, make sure that it breaks even. So all of that you can see on the following page 9. Here's a worksheet. So I mentioned that this is it's a zero-based budget plan. So the idea is for you to pay for the event based on the money taken in for the event. So step 1, like we mentioned, is estimate the number of participants, number of girls, number of adults, number of tag-alongs, other. So those others could be those that will attend but will not pay. So you would have your total number. You put your total number here as part of step 3, but before we get there, number 2 is to itemize estimate your expenses expected for this event. Here are some categories that are usually involved with any event planning. So you can see them here: rental, supplies for different things, recognition. You can add other categories as well. You'll have a quantity if it applies, a cost, and then your total. So you see, once you have your total of expenses, you would include that here. So we had our total number of participants, total expenses. We do a simple division of those, and that would result in your fee per person. Ideally, this is what you want to do. Number 4, what is your event revenue? So you're going to take that fee per person that we calculated times the number of people paying. That has your revenue. Oops, sorry. And then your break-even point is step number 5. You want to take your event revenue minus your expenses. That should give you a profit or a loss. So it's a very simple budget worksheet. To help, we also include this page by itself so that you can print as many copies as you want on our website. So let me show you where we have that. If we go back to where I showed you to find resources under the event planning category, you see here we have the event planning guide that we're using, but then you have the budget as a PDF and as a Word document in case you want to change it for yourself. So those 2 resources are available to you. Moving along from budget, step 3 is the outline. An outline is simply a schedule of event activities that you will have. I won't go into this too much because every event is different. These next 2 pages are really just to give you ideas. Make sure there's depth to your activities. Make sure we're prepared. We want to not overschedule, although there is something for having lots of things planned, even if you don't get to them. Include traditions like ceremonies. Those makes them memorable and makes your event very different from any other event and memorable, believe it or not. Girls will remember those things. And then make it fun, of course. So on this page and the following page, I have an example of an outline based on events that we really do at council. So here's an Easter egg hunt. Very simple, just a schedule, what you do the day before, the day of the event. This one's divided by levels, so very simple, very clear. The next page has a more detailed one, but it's still pretty simple. Something fantastic flags is what we call it. We have the purpose, the pre-activity, the opening, the different stations, closing, supplies needed. So you can see an outline can be very simple, one page. The important thing is to make sure that everybody involved with planning and implementing the event is aware of the outline. So it can be as simple or as detailed as you'd like. And then I have a little checklist on the left side of this page 11 to remind us if our event activities are safe, fun, flexible, affordable, challenging, positive learning experience, appropriate for the grade levels, consistent with the growth progression, and then led by well-trained and enthusiastic staff or volunteers. So just a reminder of our girl-led focus, which relates to as it relates to events. Moving along to step 4 of our event planning guide, page 12 and page 13 are all about safety. It's very important. So there's 2 pages on it. Different categories. There first is a couple to remind us of resources available. There is one chapter in Volunteer Essentials that's dedicated to safety. That's our Safety Wise chapter in Volunteer Essentials. And then, of course, as we mentioned, your safety activity checkpoints. You want to make sure that if there's any applicable activities that you are doing at your event that are in safety activity checkpoints, that you reference them thoroughly. So for example, if there's going to be hiking, there's a checkpoint for that. If there's going to be playground usage, there's a checkpoint for that. So on and on. Please make sure you follow the checkpoints. Next is you want to ensure that you are meeting the adult to girl ratios for events. There are different ratios for meetings than there are for events, travel, camping. So here I listed the ones for event, travel, camping. Make sure you are following these. These are minimum requirements per GSUSA of event volunteers necessary for the number of girls. As always, remember if you have multiple levels attending your event, you're going to go based on the ratios for the youngest level. Then we have a section, a reminder on first aid. Make sure you have a first aid kit. Make sure you have someone that's certified in first aid. If your event is a large event, 200 or more, you're expected to have one first aid certified person for every 200 participants. You want to make sure that you have health history records for all the girls attending, or that the leaders going with the girls have those with them in case you should need them. Site safety. If you have a chance, it's encouraged that you visit the site ahead of time, especially if it's a new site you've never been to, and look for potential hazards such as, holes in the ground, exposed tree roots, safety for drop on, drop off of girls. If it's open to the public, what guidelines will you have in place to make sure the girls are safe? What are the boundaries? What is off limits? Things of that nature. You may want to include some of this in the event confirmation that you send to your participants. Make sure all emergency exits are clearly marked, or you may have to make additional signs. We talked about the parking lot, and then of course restroom facilities and drinking fountains would be great. All events are trips for others. So what we mean by that is you may be putting on an event as a troop or a service unit. All of the people that will be going to your event, except for your troop, of course, that constitutes a trip for them because they are going somewhere outside of their meeting. So as such, you should be aware of what's required for them in this manner. So you want to make sure that you have taken the travel training that's on our website and is available online. As we mentioned earlier, anything that's an overnight or a trip outside of our council needs approval beforehand. If you have tag-alongs that you will allow to register for your event, additional insurance will need to be purchased to cover them. This detail is covered in the travel training, so I won't go over it too much. I do have a definition of a tag-along, and you see here, any person, child, or adult who is not a registered Girl Scout member, that's stipulated in our volunteer policies. If you have male participants attending your event, we always welcome them, of course. Make sure you have separate restroom facilities for them. If there will be sleeping overnight, they should have separate sleeping areas as well. More details on this is covered in the travel training. Lastly, emergencies. So make sure that you have the emergency procedures form available during the event. You can find it on our website under Forms and Resources. Print as many copies as you want. Make sure it's available. You may want to put one in your first aid kit. Make sure you have emergency contact information for all of your participants attending in case something should happen. It's a good idea to find the location for the nearest emergency care in case you should need to use that, especially if you're in a different place than usual. And make sure that you are prepared in case of fire, evacuation, or a missing person. There is actually a very extensive safety plan that I came across another council has. It's about 2 to 4 pages. If you would like that, please reach out to me. I didn't include it here because we are keeping it nice, simple, short. Maybe something that I include in later versions. Keep in mind also with any event, you want to have the girls follow the buddy system. That may be something that you tell them in the confirmation or as you're starting your events. That's the safety section. Step 5 is sharing your event. So to have a successful event, you want to have a lot of people there, right? And to have a lot of people there, you need to share your event. So start early and share in different ways. So one way could be through email. Another way could be through word of mouth. You would be amazed at how powerful that is. And then texting is now a newer way. Something I don't have on here, but is more and more common is Facebook messaging. That's another way to share your event. Social media is a really good way to share your event. If it's a troop event, you can post it on your troop social media platform if you have one available. If it's open to your service unit, you can ask your service unit to post it on their sites. If it's open to all council Girl Scouts, you can ask for it to be posted on our platforms, calendar, Facebook, website. If that's the case, I want to be very clear again, you must send your flyer draft to the communications manager, which is Ileana Martinez. Her email is there in the guide. You have to allow 1 week for her to review it to make sure everything is good. And once it's approved, allow for that 1 week to post it. All events on our online council calendar should be open to all until filled. You want to leave a positive impression with all of your events. Make sure your flyer reflects that. Here are a couple of details also on how to do a flyer. You want to include the Girl Scout Desert Southwest logo. You must do that. You must include your troop number or name of the service unit planning the event right at the top, presented by. I'll show you an example in a minute. If you're using images, you want to make sure that they reproduce well. You want to make sure that it's not copyrighted material. So we cannot use Disney characters, for example. We cannot use Snoopy, for example. Those are copyrighted materials. So you have to seek permission for that or stay away from them and use clip art or other free assets available. Font, we recommend that you use no more than 2 fonts on a flyer. Arial or Times New Roman, work best, and they're standard fonts for everyone. Avoid writing in all capitals or italics. Use decorative lettering sparingly, and above all, proofread your flyer. Have multiple people check it. As an added resource, we we actually included something additional with a lot more detail on how to create materials for Girl Scouts in print. I'm going to show you by going back to our website where I showed you forms and resources. Under the event planning category, you see something here that we call style guide. So if you click on the style guide, it's a completely separate 4-page document, but it's very detailed as far as what GSUSA recommends and or requires that we do when creating materials for print or view. So you can see it all here. Feel free and access that as you are doing your materials. Let us know if you have any questions. All right, so the following page 15 has this example of the template flyer. So this is something that is simple. You can see here at the top, it'll say presented by, your troop number or service unit there. You can add an image here, picture, our logo, the event name. On the right side, you would use information you would include information such as when the event is, where it is, who can participate, the deadline for registration, the fees, and who to go to for questions. Very important. The left side of the second half of the page would be used for describing and making the event appealing to others. What's the point of the event? Description of what they'll do. Why should they go to the event? How fun will it be? What will they learn? You can also include any special instructions like bring your water bottle, anything like that. So that's a sample event flyer. That's part of step 5, sharing your event. And then this next step is wrap up. Actually, this is step 6. I will change that. Step 6 is wrap up. How do we know that our event is successful? So keep that in mind. So after the event, you could actually, well, you're going to want to do a wrap up. So, event budget with actual figures. Was there a profit? Was there a loss? If there is a profit, how will that money be spent? Any outstanding invoices, make sure they're paid. If there are any supplies that can be returned for store credit or maybe used in the future, do you need to write and send thank you notes to those that help with the event? You want to debrief with your planning team if you have that time. That's a great learning tool. And then what can be improved in the future? Don't forget to share pictures with participants, your service unit, with us at council. Keep them for a scrapbook or make a video montage, and then evaluate. So you're going to want to evaluate. All of this is kind of an evaluation, self-reflective type, but you want to include your participants in that as well. So you could ask the participants at the event verbally, what they like, what they don't like, and just make a note of that. You could be more formal and have a written evaluation form or half a page that they have to fill out. Or you could do a digital, like after the event, send out a quick email with the link, or just ask them, what did you like, what did you not like? Above all, make sure that you're receptive to the comments. We may not always like what we hear, but it's part of the process to improve. All feedback is good feedback, believe it or not. The following page, 17, has an example of an evaluation that would be a written that you could pass out at your event. You see here at the top, you would put the event name, the date of the event for your reference, and then we're asking the girls to put their age and their grade. Notice I don't have a place for their name. You could add that, but this one is anonymous. And then it's basically 9 questions, right? 1 through 7 is you circle agree a lot, agree, disagree a lot, don't know. And then the last 2 questions are qualitative for them to fill out on their own. That's just an example. I have seen other evaluations for younger girls where it's maybe 5 questions and very simple happy face, sad face that they would circle as their answers. All right, so that goes through all 6 steps. The last 2 pages are a recap of everything in this guide. So, for example, page 18 in the gray at the top, you would fill out your details of the event. And then the rest of it is really just a recap of everything we have covered in the guide, a checklist with some fill in the blanks. So you would do this. This is your event plan checklist. Here is page 18, and here is page 19, the second part to that. This is so that you can put all of these details together as your event plan, submit that to your membership manager as required. So make sure you are communicating with your membership manager and your service unit. The last thing here on page 19 is to make sure that they are included, that they know what's going on, and that you are planning this event, and to also give you any feedback or advice and make sure that we are doing things as we should be doing. So that wraps up the event planning guide very briefly. That's available on our website now for you to download. I wanted to again show you our webpage where you can see all of this. So just to end, you would go to www.gsdsw.org. You would click on forms here. I'm going to start over. And you can search for them. They'll come up. However, to make it easier, I think if you click on the options link here, you should have an event category that comes up. Event planning category. There we go. And if you just click on that event planning category and click search, you will see the event planning guide that we just referred to, the style guidelines that we were talking about. And then you'll have 2 copies of the evaluation, 2 copies of a flyer template, 2 copies of budget. It's 2 copies because one is usually a PDF and the other is a format that you can edit if you would like to. So Publisher or Microsoft Word. So we hope that these are useful to you. If not, if you think of something else that you would need that would be helpful, or you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Monica Hasso. I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry. I'm the Volunteer Services Manager for our council. If you're listening to this, you can find me on our staff directory, or you can ask your membership manager for any assistance as well. To show you our staff directory, we would go to our website again, which is gsdsw.org. You would do our council here. And then on the left side, you'll see staff directory. And here is a list of all of us. So my information, I'm in the El Paso office, is right here. And you can see if you click the little envelope, you will have the option to email directly. So feel free and do that. Let me know if there's anything else we can do to improve or you have any questions. I hope that this was useful and brief. We will post this webinar recording on our YouTube channel as well so that you can reference. You can access our YouTube channel by going to our same website. At the very bottom, you have the YouTube icon. Click on it, it'll take you straight there. So again, thank you so much for listening to this. Let us know of any feedback, and we hope to see you again soon. Hope your events are successful. Bye-bye.